You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Angela Wick, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi, Angela, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm super thrilled to have you on this show today, as you are one of the world's leading experts in business analysis, and this is just going to be a really terrific chat.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for this chat.
So we met up in what was it, in June in Copenhagen, right, Angela?
Yeah, it was like end of May, early June, but we knew each other before that, remember?
Yes, I did. But it's just, you don't often get to meet people who live on the other side of the world, right? You're in California right now, aren't you?
Yeah, Santa Barbara, California.
Yeah, nice. I'm in Denmark, so it's that's just quite a bit of, land and sea between us. So
Yes, quite a bit.
So, but this is great. I'm really happy to have you here today. And let's just jump straight into it. So, Angela, how do we make adequate business analysis in an age of exponential 10x innovation growth, right? Things moving so fast. How do we make sure that we are even analyzing things that seem just relatively static, or are we even analyzing things based on what we could know or should know?
Yeah. Analysis becomes even more important when we're going through these spurts of innovation. But we have to think about it differently, because I think sometimes when we're in more stagnant, stable places of development, we tend to get into more like, let's write requirements, let's write specs, let's have a stable process. But I feel like what we miss sometimes is during exponential innovation, we really have to crank up our continuous improvement, continuous analysis, and kick it up a notch with our strategic alignment. So things like creating and defining meaningful measurements, things that are user behavior driven, like what behaviors are we actually trying to change in our users with this new technology? We need to do more hypotheses and experiments. And analysis is part of defining what those are and which ones to do and how to prioritize them. And a lot of more user scenario driven work, instead of thinking about, well, what are the requirements? And because a lot of teams can go down kind of a rabbit hole of defining the tech spec instead of the actual analysis that we're trying to achieve to align to strategy. So in my mind, when we're going through these spurts of innovation, it comes down to top-notch analysis, facilitation, decision velocity, and how does analysis enable that decision velocity within organizations to make the right decisions at the right time with the right people?
So it's more on, focus more on the people side than the tech side, right? That's one of the things I wanted to speak to you about as well, right? I have this weird notion, right, this weird question that maybe, should business analysis divert even more towards tech adoption? I think you said just no or less, right? But I think that's an interesting question right now, because technology is moving like lightning fast right now, right? And we need, I think the business analyst role is also to be this missing link between business and technology, isn't it? How do we link that now when it stretches?
The business analyst role or business analysis, no matter who does it or what title does it, has to lean in just enough to understand the technology and what it's capable of. We can't just sit on the sideline, right?
But that's the problem, isn't it? Knowing just what are we capable of doing now?
So true. What is just enough? And I always feel like, for me personally, if this helps others with that, when I'm digging in, it's if I start to figure out how it works to a point where I'm focused on that how too much versus the value it provides, I've gone too far and I need to step back.
Yeah.
So I like to say, as long as my brain is still focused on, well, this new technical detail I've learned, what does that do to add value to a user, to an organization, to a customer? If I lose track of that, then I've gone too far. If I'm still kind of like light bulbing all over the place on, oh, wait a minute, that means a user could do this, or do this, or do this, or we could change the process to do this or that, then I'm still in that zone of learning the technology at the right level. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. But it also changes it to value analysis, right? To some extent,
Exactly.
is what we're doing.
So we want to learn about the technology enough to understand the value. And then I think we've got plenty of technical resources working on the technical how end of it. So to play that role to communicate between the tech and the business teams and skill sets, our job is really to learn just enough on both sides to be able to make that powerful connection and enable decision velocity between these teams.
But that also means that you will always be your focus is always on the value, right? And if we put Angela Wick to run the whole global innovation right now, right? And say whatever we focus on, and are we developing too much tech that we don't have a need for right now, Angela?
Well, that is definitely a risk, and we fear that for
Mm.
sure, right? We have to make sure that we're adding value with the technology that we build and that we innovate. And there's a kind of a fine line, right? We have to experiment and we've got
Yeah.
to build things and experiment along the way and hypothesize along the way, which means, yes, there will be some waste. But at the same time, we catch it faster and we learn along the way. So,
Mm.
how can we enable teams to not be so focused on an upfront solution or an idea and implement it and really enable them to learn along the way and create meaningful experiments and learning? And to
Mm.
me, that's analysis, right? We're saying, well, wait, what experiment are we going to do? There might be 25 different ideas on the team, but instead of the loudest person's idea going forward as a team, we need analysis to say, well, which experiment makes sense? Which one aligns to strategy, reduces risk, and helps us learn what we need to learn along the way about the users, about the technology, about how this fits into our business environment.
Mm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I want to sort of lean into. I think and I didn't. We wrote a little bit beforehand before this episode, and I didn't write this to you, right? But I want to lean into an analogy that Lorian Pratt actually made. It. You just made me want to lean into that. She said that we're the Wright brothers didn't invent the airline; they invented the airplane, right? And I want you to lean into that a little bit and say, do we need airlines, and what does that mean, and do we need airports as well, right, Angela?
Yes. In fact, I did do some writing about this and prep for this podcast in terms of, are we optimizing the right things?
Mm.
Right? It's easy to optimize this task or this touch point with a customer. But in times of 10x innovation, we have to look outside that box and say, well, wait a second. We might be optimizing something that won't exist in a few years
Mm.
or in a few months. Right? So,
Mm.
or if we optimize it, we're too focused on this one siloed piece to optimize versus the entire value stream or the entire customer journey. And
Mm.
so, how do we get teams and organizations to enable that type of thinking? And instead of just optimizing one piece, really looking at the bigger picture of what can be optimized. And how do we do the analysis as to knowing what to optimize within our customer journey and value stream, right? These are the challenges that organizations are facing in this innovation spurt
Yeah.
that business analysis can help with. And everyone's
So
doing business analysis, not just the title role BA, right?
no, no, yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's also all these failed digital transformations we've had over the years, right? And you have tons of those stories, right? And doesn't it feel a little bit like we should have we should have succeeded with those, right? Those were our what you call training field, and now
I was
we're
just
in the
thinking our
war.
training wheels. Yeah.
Yeah, but now we're in the war, right? And the training drills, were just those, and we've missed all of them, and now we've sent ourselves to war, and we might, get disrupted tomorrow. Because digital transformation is about this, right? That the idea of that is to zoom out from the single task and say, how do we transform as a whole what we do and how we operate our value streams, our business models, and all that, right? And we
Exactly.
failed at that miserably, 70% or something like that, according to Gartner, as far as I read. I think I remember.
Yeah.
And, and now we are in this crazy AI flux. So is it too late to learn?
Well, yeah, you and I are thinking the same on that whole digital transformation piece that too many failed at that. And the question
Mm.
is, did they learn?
Yeah.
Because if they continue to try the same things and continue to fail, they're going to fail with AI as well, right? So, exactly, there are those lessons learned. The question is, did we learn them? Did your organization learn them? Did the team learn them? Because
Mm.
digital transformation was that first foray into, yes, exactly, collapse multiple tasks and touch
Yeah.
points, redesign the business model, redesign the customer experience, the interactions, and just change up how we look at innovation. And you're right, now we have this like exponential growth happening, exponential change. And if we haven't figured out experiments, hypotheses, being adaptable, learning from our work, and really gotten into a cadence of increments and iterations, and value focused ones, that is, we're going to really
Mm.
struggle with AI. And of course, the fear is just spending far too much money without the value. And that's what I'm hearing the most from tech leaders around is, oh my gosh, you do business analysis work. How do I enable a better cost to value ratio?
Mm.
And that's really at the heart of business analysis, right? Is cost to value. How do I get more value with less cost? How do our
But I
teams
spoke
focus
about
on it?
as I spoke. My last episode was with Pedro Berrocoso on procurement, and I spoke to him about how procurement became something that was became a compliance add-on to the company. Well, in reality, it actually should be reflecting everything the company stands for when it's buying. Its ethics, its values, its value proposition, its everything, right? Its strategy should be involved in this, right? But it becomes just something you do outside. And isn't that also the problem here that we don't connect things, right? So the cost to value, yes, you said that's the chain, but that chain is not just a simple chain, right? It's those companies that manage to do the transformation, they often break down the silos, right? And every BA, most BAs would be able to say, oh, our problem is this and that and that. But usually that this and that goes across multiple silos, right? And isn't that maybe the problem that we're still organized as we were 70, 80, 90 years ago, and
Yeah.
we haven't innovated there?
Right. But those same organizations that haven't innovated that, I fear some of their future because, as we connect our internal knowledge and data to our generative AI tools. So
Mm,
imagine you've got, something like ChatGPT and you connect into it your SOPs, your code bases, your processes, your
yeah.
documents, your knowledge base of your entire organization. Now, we're not saying let that out to the public, but right in a private instance, you're enabling a business analyst, for example, to find those gaps in an instant,
Mm,
right? And able to say, wait, if I make this change, like even think about the latest model of GPT doing the more reasoning. Is
yeah.
it called IO, right? And
Yeah. Oh one. Oh one. Yeah.
oh, one, I'm like, I'm dyslexic, getting that mixed up. And it's early for me. But right, so the reasoning, I'm really excited to keep playing around with that because the ability to reason through all of that and analyze the impact, because some of that's already happening with 4.0. Some of its
Mm.
impact analysis is already happening. And I don't think 99% of BAs or organizations or leaders that manage BAs even quite understand this yet. They will soon, right?
Mm.
That some of this
Uh,
impact analysis is already happening, but it doesn't mean that that removes the role of business analysis, right? It's that augmented human and AI connection and a business analyst with just enough tech knowledge and just enough business knowledge to be able to edit that prompt or ask a few more questions or look at the output and be like, whoa, 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 or that is low risk, or that one I care about, that aligns to my strategy. Like just the speed that we can do that analysis and the velocity of decision making is what just kind of gets crazy in my mind when I look at all this advancing.
I think I just saw also Ethan Mollick because I'm also impressed. I'm impressed by it as well. But Ethan Mollick wrote very quickly a couple of days afterward that it's really good at doing all these rounds of questioning itself, but you can't really direct it. So the reasoning it will the chain of thoughts it will take is its own. That's so the hallucinations are just to the power to some extent, right? So it's just exponential hallucinations, and I think that's also a problem, isn't it? Because it will come up with something usually that sounds even more right than before, but it's taken a route you wouldn't necessarily take, and then we just also create an even more complex automation bias for ourselves, aren't we? Something that's even more irrefutable by our own minds, but that we wouldn't have made up ourselves.
Yeah, but
Isn't that the
that, and
fear?
that's why business analysis is so important, right?
Mm,
You just teed that right up. So a good business analyst that has good judgment
mm,
with business and tech, can catch that, right? And can be developing a thought process to say, well, wait a second, these hallucinations could be magically amazing with the idea they generate, or it could be catastrophic. Do I have the right judgment, reasoning, and wisdom with my tech and business background to ask the right questions and do the right validations to see which it is?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But Angela, I think there's something here, right? Also saying that if we can know more and ChatGPT can help us know more, right? Then we'll do smarter things. I think also that is something that I've discussed earlier that we already know. I also said that just before. Most business analysts knows what's wrong, but they can't change it, right? Knowing is not doing, and knowing what our challenge is not. I think Blockbuster even knew that they had to go digital, right? But they couldn't because of their franchise models, right? And all of the stores out there who had a stake in Blockbuster, who had physical DVDs, right? So, do business analysis need to be more focused now on stakeholder management, or what is this? Is this a power play? What do you think?
Oh gosh, a power play. Interesting. Stakeholder management, yes, among other things, right? So, stakeholder management in that the potential for decision velocity to accelerate to me is huge. Where today a business analyst might say, my stakeholders don't make decisions fast enough. I'm
Mm,
continuously waiting on decisions from them, and yet everyone's pushing me on time and pressure and deadlines. So this issue is going to become bigger in that there's going to be more decisions to be made at more of a rapid pace. So then how do we build the skills and processes to help business analysts get our business stakeholders to make decisions faster,
mm,
right?
mm,
It could be a skill issue to upskill. It could be a decision analysis issue. Is it the right time and the right person? And is it the right decision? Because I think when decisions aren't made fast enough, often it's because the person you're asking to make the decision doesn't think it's the right decision to be made, or it's the right time, it's too early or too late, or it's not the right person to be making that decision. Now,
mm.
those three areas, I mean, that goes from strategy to what a screen should look like that a user interfaces with. We're talking decisions big and small, and requirements span that whole range, right?
Mm.
So that's where I
Yeah.
see like once we really start using and leveraging AI as our partner and our augment human machine collaboration with analysis, that decision velocity is such a big part of it.
But that also means maybe that what you're automating with the business with AI and business analysis is actually the analysis part, right? And then what's left is the whole evangelism of the analysis or the decision influence part, right? And that makes me also think about what is actually the human. I think I spoke to Doc Shannon the other day.
Oh yeah,
He was also on the podcast some months ago, and you know him from
yeah, yeah.
California, right? I know that. And he said that he once asked his dad why humans have eyes in front of their head, right? And then his dad said, because there's always a human behind them to sort of help, just we don't need to have eyes on the side. We're team based. So is that the future for business analysts to be more of the support cast and to than being necessarily the analyst? This is about supporting humans. Is that what we're going to do when AI takes over all these analysis parts?
I think it's still analysis, but at a higher level. But I
Mm,
also think that that stakeholder management and facilitating decisions is a huge
mm,
piece as well. In addition to that, there is some detailed analysis, I think, around data quality. But let me explain what I mean by that. We know data quality is a huge factor in leveraging AI. But at the same time, I don't think BAs need to be data nerds, but somebody, and I think it's a business analyst, needs to focus on how did bad data get into the environment and ecosystem to begin with. Data
mm,
comes from users. I know sometimes we buy data too, but usually that data is somewhat cleaner because we purchased it, right? It's the
mm,
data humans provide that typically needs a lot more cleaning.
mm,
So business analysts often evaluate and analyze user workflow and the human connection to technology. So if we're looking at, well, how did that data get in there to begin with? The human provided it. Then, okay, well, what can we do with that experience to optimize data quality? To me, I think
mm.
that's a big part of business analysis going forward as well.
Yeah, and
Is
also what data don't we have, right? What
what
are we
data
building our
don't we
narrative
have?
on all the things we don't have? Or the example with the plane and the gunshots, right? Where you have to make the data on the planes that crashed. You've seen that one, right, from the British Air Force, right? Where
I,
you have holes on the wings, and they saw there were holes on specific parts of the planes that came back. So some people would say, okay, let's reinforce those plots, right? But the problem is that those that were hit on the other parts of the plane, they crashed, so they never got them back. So you should reinforce the places that didn't have any gunshots.
Funny, yeah, yeah. And then also, we want to use data more for evidence-based decision making. Like we
Yeah.
say we do and want to now, but we're just scratching the surface on that, right? And in terms of business analysts being able to leverage data and have access to the data through generative AI, right? To get at data to then help business leaders make decisions better. But again, that requires data quality. Now, okay, let's take this a little further. Today, data gets into systems usually by selecting something on a Dropbox or a user typing something in, right? Okay. Well, now if our business processes keep using AI, and they will, but maybe it's verbal data or transcribed data. So we introduce more data quality risks to the process.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then, okay, as a business analyst looking at the user workflow, customer workflow, we have to focus on wait, the data flow through it, and where did the data come from, and how do I maximize the quality at that input point
Yeah. Yeah,
and as
exactly.
it flows, right?
Yeah, but that's the digitization part, right? To some extent, right? How do we get the data in, and then the digitalization is the next part, right? So that you need to optimize all. I always say that, you need to in an archetypical, I don't know, digital company is good at digitalization, automation, and then insights and decision making in the end, right? But you need to do all three at the same time. You can't stop doing the digitization and cleaning your data that comes in, because then the rest of the chain won't work, right? You have to move
Right.
the same way around, right?
And that's a detailed analysis that is somewhat detailed. It's not like AI can do all of that for you. We have to direct the AI to do a lot of that analysis and work, right? And it's stuff that I think we're not doing enough of today, but it's quite detailed analysis work.
Mm,
It's user focused, it's data focused, it's tech focused, it's kind of everything. So I feel like the details that we work in with analysis are going to be shifting. They already are, right?
mm,
Instead of writing tech specs, we're going to have to find these areas of detail that we zone in on and know
mm.
they're the right things to zone in on, right? Am I zoning in on creating 100 different scenarios and experiments of what Gen AI is going to bring back? And how do I create guardrails to know when that response is good enough to continue a
Mm,
process? That's a big detailed work a BA might do, right? Or this data analysis. How do we experiment and zone in on getting high quality data into our ecosystem and environment?
mm.
Or how do we partner with some data analysts and tech folks to clean the data and make sure
Yeah,
that whatever gets cleaned actually aligns to what the intention of that data is and how we're going to use it going forward? So, as much as business analysis is going to elevate to more strategic and stakeholder management skills, the detailed skills get shifted a bit. That's,
yeah,
I think, what we're
yeah,
seeing,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but Angela, I love this discussion already, right? It's touching upon so much that is, holistic for the entire company and enterprise, and how we change our companies, and how we know what's going on, right? But I also, people always say it's people, process, tech, and that in that in that direction, right? That chain of events. That's what we do. First, you look at what the people are doing, then you look at the process that these people are doing, then you add technology to it, right? But it's
Right.
AI sort of right now disturbing this way of working with change. Are people putting AI first?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think people process tech is still valid. I think how we work within that changes, right? Much faster iterations and increments of it,
Mm, mm,
continuous monitoring of that. I think too many times when we think people process tech, sometimes it's associated with a traditional software development lifecycle, for example, of take
mm.
a solution and then go analyze people, process tech, and go all the way forward. Here we have to do so many more iterations and loops and learnings with it in a more adaptable way, right? We have to
Mm,
be so much more responsive to monitoring all of those items as we build and deliver. Whereas I
yeah,
think
but
historically
but
it's
what I'm
upfront
looking for,
analysis of it all.
Angela, is I want to have your opinion. Do we need an AI strategy? Right, that's what people always. A lot of people are talking about AI strategies. Do we need that? Do we need to put tech first and say this is we we? It doesn't matter what we do, just as long as we get AI. Okay, I put that on. Yeah,
You're putting that
I
on
make
me.
that. Yeah,
So
no,
I
but
mean,
I
I'm
also
not.
I also almost gave the answer there, right, in my
Well,
question.
it's funny because I don't think of myself or business analysts as someone to build an AI roadmap or strategy, for example. I think of it more in terms of we need to enable whatever strategy
Yeah.
that is. And whatever strategy that is has to be flexible, has to be able to change because obviously
Yeah.
it's innovating so quickly, we can't know the answers now. But the enablement strategy that connects, I think, to the analysis piece is things like buy versus build and having
Mhm.
a strategy around that and understanding, do we even have the data and the infrastructure to build something, or of course buy? And I think many organizations are going to buying their large language models, buying solutions, right, that
Mhm.
already have the AI built and the tech built. But also in an AI strategy, I think what gets missed is the enablement of the culture of experimentation, the data quality streams that go
Mhm.
along with it, and changing those, like we just talked about, ethics and how are we going to monitor ethics going forward in our enablement strategy. And then, of course, measuring our success and monitoring the data so that when things go off the rails, we know it immediately. It's not like we have to hear about it from somebody else, like our
So, so,
customers.
so, so, Angela, what do you feel about? How do you feel about people just giving, companies just saying, here's a license for Copilot, here's a license for ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever, right? And let's see you get more productive, dear employees.
Well, I like the first part because I like the idea for people to learn and experiment with it to learn what it can
Mhm.
do. Um, Productivity individually is kind of a side pocket,
And
right?
how do you KPI this, right?
Right. I mean, I think that's actually the problem of a state of where we're at with AI right now is the masses keep talking about individual productivity, and we're
Mm.
not looking at process, value stream, customer journey productivity overall. And
No.
if I maximize my productivity, but the person I work with maximizes their productivity, and we're all working in isolation on our productivity, the task that I maximized might not even be valid anymore once we all look at all of our tasks together.
It's like putting on the edge. It's like having this the teacher saying I'll just use AI to review the assignments that the class gives to me, and the class is just using AI to
Yeah,
create.
exactly. It's like the
Where's
telephone
the
game
value?
then. Are
Yeah,
you thinking the
yeah. What's the
telephone
value?
game where it's like an AI told me this, and so then I passed it to you, and AI told me this, and at the end of the day, it becomes low quality because of the
No, but
iterations
also just
through?
thinking, what's the point of doing the assignment if AI is writing it and AI is reading it, right? There's just no value in it, right? It's just
Yeah.
a hollow exercise, right?
Yeah, I also think of it as like, our work processes today and our roles and our titles and our organizations were defined without this technology, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
now it's like,
True.
wait a second. If we just keep trying to define a 50-year-old role and optimize a 50-year-old task, then
Yeah.
exactly, it's just not going to help. We have to look at it more holistically and almost do business analysis on our own processes and our own workflows and say, wait, let's stop optimizing this touch point of this task and start looking at the whole, right?
So this is AI actually, and now we've been sort of touching on this all the time. Is AI the big silo killer, the big function killer? Is this the big is this the big like I always say, AI is for Microsoft the argument for everyone to go cloud, right? That's what they've been looking for. But is AI also the argument for all business analysts to tell companies that now we really need to break down the silos, redefine functions? Is this actually like one ring to rule them all for you guys, Angela?
You know, that's a very complex question because some ways I say yes, of course, and then
Mm.
reality pulls you back in and says, but we're humans with behaviors that are really difficult to change and
Yeah,
constructs. Like our own minds and behaviors will get in the way of that. I
yeah.
just don't know how long it'll take to break it down, right? Obviously, some organizations will do it much faster than others due to culture and mindset. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Lassie? Is it like, yes, it could happen. At the same time, there's reality and the pull of humanity.
I'm, I'm relatively recently, at least, undecided on this. I move in very much in sinus curves, and I think my boss right now, he's starting to, whenever we have meetings where we talk about what I'm going to do for my next presentations and blah blah blah. He always starts asking me, so I need to know what's your temperature right now. How do you feel about AI right now? And I'm an AI. I've worked with this, right? But are you in the negative side, or are you in the optimist side, right? Right now, I'm moving towards more of an optimist side again, because it moves like that all the time for me for some reason, right? But I think you also have to move like that to be realistic in this market, right? You can't be
Right.
either just yay and nay. I want to be in the middle. I try to be realistic all the time. That's my aim. It's really difficult, but my point is that everyone's talking about a bubble. I talk about a bubble as well, right? Sometimes, but I'm starting to say, okay, maybe this isn't a bubble. Maybe technology is just evolving so fast, and it keeps evolving so fast. And the real challenge we have is the disparity or the gulf between users and technology, right? And that's not a bubble. That's just being outpaced, right? And the
Yes.
value is still there, right? So there's tons of value. So I think that, yeah, I think the world will change with AI. I think um, that sometimes slow is a design, right? Just like with our political institutions, sometimes we made them cumbersome and slow so that we can't have a Hitler take over everything, right? Sometimes it
Hmm.
just makes sense to have things that are slow because it entrenches who we are, it builds institutions, it builds organizations and people and cultures and political entities. It builds ERP systems where you can't just go and change all of the data at once, right? Because you have super user access. Sometimes you
Right.
have to go through an interface because it's slow. So slow is a design very often, and I think that's the thing we're missing in the hype talk right now. Also, everything automate, everything makes speed faster, faster, faster. But sometimes you don't want that. Who wants that, right? So I think we need to redefine it. But I think the human drag, the human culture, is actually the slow design. There's I used to say there's only one thing slower than tectonic movements, and that's changing people, right?
Yes. I mean, I was hearing on the news, I'm trying to remember the exact example, you know, groups of workers trying to put in their contracts that their jobs cannot be displaced by
Mm.
AI. And so you've
Oh
got,
yeah.
right, human factors like that, like because our governments and our society hasn't figured out, wait a second, what if all of a sudden
Mm.
these jobs are replaced, right? Like, so there's so many factors. There's compliance factors, regulations factors that to your point could be appropriately slowing things down until society is ready. But the
You know,
technology is moving fast enough, and I think there are organizations and people experimenting with the technology that are 5, 10 years ahead of society. So if people are thinking, well, it's just not, we're not going to figure it out. Oh no, it's figured out. I'm
mm,
optimistic. It's all figured out almost already in labs and in
yeah.
heads and in models. It's people are pushing it as far as society will allow it to go.
Yeah, but there's just something, Angela, some Keynesian, economics almost here, right? Whenever we have people getting fired, we hire them to do some things, right?
Yeah.
If there's no one to buy what the robots produce, right? Will we have any robots? I maybe is that too simple? Am I being too simple, too narrow here? I just think there's a supply demand thing here. So we don't have any AI supply if there's no one buying it. So if everyone's fired, we, is that a bad take?
I don't know, and I think there's things we can't imagine that will happen with that all, right? So then we're assuming that organizations produce similar to what they produce today. But wait, that's going to change. So
Mm,
how many organizations are there, what they're capable of producing, how much they can produce, how much society can take in. Like we see this in economics all the time where if
yeah,
too many people are offering the same types of products, some go away. Because
yeah.
as humans, we can't consume that many things,
But,
right?
just imagine this, that suddenly, 100,000 people are being laid off, and no job growth is not growing in the U.S. anymore because of AI, right?
Right.
Then the economy stalls, and then the free money stalls, and then money going into tech companies to invest stalls. So you see, that's my point, right?
Hmm.
It's all connected in this
Yeah.
liberal economy, at least, right?
Yeah, it totally is. It'll be, yeah, I don't, I'm not that smart to
Give me an answer, Angela. I want an
put
answer
it
now.
all through on the economics, although I do know some economists I could bring into the conversation. Um, but yeah,
No,
it's
but
crazy.
there's just some chicken egg stuff going on here. I think that's also interesting from a
Mhm.
an analyst perspective. Are we going to reduce won't we just add to the complexity of what we're doing? Haven't we always done that, Angela? That's actually what I'm trying to get at here. Haven't we
Yeah.
just added to complexity whenever we've been able to do more? It's not like there's less need for business analysts, even though we've improved our businesses.
Right.
No, it's not like innovation has been standing still for 100 years, right? But we just added
Right.
to the complexity of what we're doing, right? Isn't that true?
It's so true, right? I mean, I remember 25 years ago getting a chain email that said
Mm-hmm.
something like in 20 years. And, one of the things like, oh, you'll be banking from your phone. And I remember my friends and I at work back then just looking at our mobile phones at the time, which had no screens or color or anything, right? And just going, don't understand. I just can't even imagine, right? And
Back to
and we're
playing
on that
Snake.
brink right now. We're on that brink right now. Where are they're on TikTok or something like that now, right? Well,
Mm.
what will we be doing in 20 years from now? But we're at that brink and that cusp, except for now we're like, well, wait, is it going to happen faster than that? Or wait, 25 years ago, did someone imagine all this and knew exactly how it would work technically? It's
Mm.
just society took how long to get there. I mean, well, I've been banking for online on my phone for more than a few years, but you know what I mean, right? It's like
Mm.
a lot of the ideas are way ahead, but then what's the blocker to get there? And I think what we're saying is a lot of it is society analysis and change, right?
But business analysis are also managing complexities, right? That's what you do. That's what they do. They say we need them because we have complexities. We're constantly increasing complexity, but we also need someone to understand that complexity. So it's not just all about technology, right? And I think that the role of the business analysts have grown in the last 25 years. There's been more business analysts, right? Isn't that
Right.
also true? So it's not like we've stopped having them, and it's not like just predicting what will happen in the future. Maybe people saw that we'll, I don't know, hoverboards. That was also predicted, by the way. It didn't come through yet, but we'll have mobile banking from our phones. Cool enough. But did someone predict that you'll have like a role called a business analyst, and you'll be hiring hundreds of them?
Yes. So you make a good point, and it's something that in my book, I wrote a book recently about AI and business
Mm.
analysis called Future Proof, and my co-author and I, Tim Coventry, wrote about this whole construct of the history of business analysis and how the complexity has increased the need for business analysis because
Yeah.
many years ago, a system analyst slash programmer had all of the knowledge of a system and the business user they supported, but we weren't integrating data and have multiple users using data. It was just a
Mm.
much more simpler construct and context. Yes, as technology and the ecosystems are increasingly becoming more complex, exactly. Nobody has all of the knowledge in their head to say what the requirements are, to answer every question, to find every gap, to make everything seamless for the user.
Mm.
There's a whole host of techniques that are used, literally thousands of analysis techniques. Maybe there's 100 that are more common than others that we use, and you have to be trained on and practice and skilled on to actually do that analysis within this complexity, right? What are those
Mm.
user impacts? How do we
Yeah.
make this smooth? And how do we make sure our users are better off versus worse off? And yeah, that's a whole skill set. We don't just say, "Oh, you've got knowledge of this system and business process. Boom, you're a BA." And a lot of organizations have done that and are still doing that to their own demise, perhaps, because then
Mm.
knowledge doesn't mean analysis is happening.
So if you say that complexities has increased so much that you need to have these more holistic BAs that can look beyond what the obvious in front of them. And this is now this is maybe I've asked you many big questions today. I've even asked you what if you were in control of the world's innovation, Angela. But what, so that maybe that was a big one. But are we actually making the world simpler or better with technology in general, Angela, or just making it more complex and more estranged?
That's
Whoa.
a very complex question. You didn't prep me for that one.
Yeah, but that's why I'm asking a BA expert, right?
I
Because
know,
you
right?
live by complexity.
I mean, I think the promise of business analysis should be to take the complex and make it simple,
Yeah. To
right?
reduce the estrangement, right?
Right. And it should be to do that. Is it actually happening? I think we have a long way to go. I think we've had a history of not investing in analysis skills in organizations
Mm.
and thinking knowledge can replace that. And
Mm.
and that's just going to prove us wrong more and more and more as we
What do we need
advance.
to do? What do we need to do, Angela, to make sure that we get these complexities narrated into something simple for everyone to understand?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need analysis skills throughout the organization, not just business analysts. Now, business analysts as a title and role have a huge discrepancy in skill development to what's needed
Mm.
today. Now, okay, what's needed tomorrow? Oh my gosh, we're so far behind in that in many organizations in the skills needed. But then I think analysis skills have to be present in a lot of roles, not just business analysis. Business analysis happens at the C-level, in the management layers, all the way across the organization. So many of our knowledge worker roles have to do with analysis in some way. A business analysis professional is someone who has deeper analysis skills, right? A little bit of tech, a little bit of business, okay, a lot of each, but really it's the
Mm,
analysis skills that sit between that they're experts in facilitating those conversations. Those
mm,
techniques and skills help them bring the right conversation to the right people with the right level of detail to accelerate that decision making. And that skill set, again, I think we're at like on a scale of 0 to 10, most organizations that have, in their management layers are maybe at about a 2, but I think folks don't understand how much better it could be. And their
mm.
business analysts are probably at a 3 or 4 or less, right, in most organizations, but there's so much further to go. And I like to talk about the concept of a 10x business analyst, someone that can do 10 to 100 times more impact in the same amount of time. And it's simply because they're actually doing analysis in the organization. And
But
I'm
don't you
not
think it's
talking,
also because don't you think it's also because they're entrenched? Most analysts are entrenched in some, siloed part of the organization, and that the agenda of that silo.
right. That's a big problem for a lot of them. And yeah, usually when I talk to C-level leaders, they understand that, but they're like, but that doesn't mean they're isolated to that. But then there's, 3 or 4 management layers down that just layer after layer after layer is squashing the BA into that silo. And it's
Mm, mm.
very difficult for a BA to get out of that silo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you have to
even
sort of
though,
live between it, right? You have to bring the right people to the table all the time, and the table is the business. It's not IT. It's not procurement. It's not finance. It's not operations of factories or whatever. It is the company that should be the table that the BA is bringing people to, right?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much more that can happen in organizations and what's happening today. And there needs to be with this complexity coming up. Or we're
Mm,
just at risk for wasting a lot of dollars
mm,
and resources on solutions that aren't providing the value folks intended.
yeah. Yeah, this is awesome, Angela. I think a great conversation again, and I just want to shift gear a little bit because I want to just pull you a little bit back to November 2022
Yeah.
because I've asked other people this, and I think I need to ask you this as well, right? Because you're a global leader in business analysis, written 2 books, right? Or 3, 1?
Oh, and business analysis, that's a really tough one. I've contributed to a lot, but just the
Yeah.
one
Okay.
book with Tim this year on AI and
Yeah,
BA.
but then you've done your podcast and you have tons of followers and you're very BA,
Yeah.
focused. You're what I call a deep expert usually, right? That's what
Yeah.
I'd call you, right? So how did you feel when ChatGPT was released in November 2022?
Well, I was excited and, right away got an account on OpenAI and started playing
Mm,
around. That's what inspired me to write a book about business analysis because it wasn't just about ChatGPT, right? I very quickly saw and connected what this meant down the road and
mm,
what, how this would change the business analyst role, the skill sets, what we do, everything, right? And and then when I started talking to folks, I started seeing that I was seeing things further down the line than a lot of folks were. I wasn't just looking at an individual productivity layer. I'm looking, oh my gosh, wait a second, this can completely change the SDLC, completely change the interaction BAs have within an organization, completely change the skill sets and everything, right?
mm,
So that's where it was like, oh my gosh. And yes, I saw the quality issues as well, but I also saw the potential and saw how, okay, this is going to be very quickly resolved.
mm,
And that, wait a second, if we're so concerned about AI making mistakes, but we as humans do as well. So then my brain went towards like, okay, well, how do we control and put guardrails on what humans do? And then how does this
mm,
translate to AI? And the danger zone, of course, as well, it could happen so quickly, or like you mentioned, AI on AI on AI, and it just kind of gets
mm,
away from us. But again, we have to put guardrails on anything we do as humans as well. So why
mm,
would, and and deterministic systems we do as well. So it's, why is this any different? That's how my mind looks at it. What do you mean we just use this without putting guardrails and validate? Of course we would.
Mhm.
So anyway, so yeah, I was excited about it, and every time a new version comes out, I'm excited to play around with it. Uh, and I even find within the same version, of course, that the same question you ask, it's a different answer, a different
Mhm.
time, which usually it's a better answer, but it's also kind of scary because then it's not deterministic. How do we build solutions that, right, can get us there? So
Yeah.
it's really learning these boundaries of AI and figuring out how to use them. But I've been really excited about it. But I'm kind of that type that just likes to dig in and learn new things too.
Yeah, one of the things you just said about looking at humans because of AI, right? You started doing that. It always makes me think that I'm always very wary of people looking at humans through the lens of AI, because I think we need to look at AI through the lens of the human, right? So I always say
Hmm.
that the reason they they're not allowed to make mistakes is because they don't have human rights, they don't have liberal rights. They're not the agents of this world. We are. We are the final level of this demand. We are you know, uh, as I started saying, right? God made the world, but it is up to us to give things name, right? That's what we have to do. It's our task. It's not something we can say we want to do. It's what we have to do, right? So we have a different role that way, and that means that we can make mistakes, but AI can't because it's a system. If it makes a mistake, we will kill it. If you make a mistake, I can't kill you because of human rights. That's the point, right? That's your
That's
liberal
super
right.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the change we all have to like figure out is before systems were deterministic, and if they made a mistake, it was someone's fault, and we could fix it.
Mm,
And
mm.
with AI, we're trying to mock human intelligence, right? And so, yeah, it's like, well, wait, we have guardrails in place to identify and correct human mistakes and to deal with them with humanity.
Mm.
Can we apply the same
Yeah,
stuff to
we've been
AI?
building these. We've been building so that automations that take the robot out of human, the robotic things we do. But now we've made something that takes the non-robotic things out of us and turns it into a robot. And there's some weird shit going on here, right?
Yeah, I mean and that's the thing. We've got to think out of the box. We've got to think differently about technology from here on
But
out.
do you feel as hyped today, Angela, as you did back then? You said I could see where this would go and how this would change. Do you feel the same way today?
So it's funny. I go in and out of yes, and I feel in and out of how fast it's gonna go. Right. So it's like when I first kind of started seeing the future, I was like in such a hurry to write the book because I thought it would happen so fast. And then
Mm,
now it's like, oh, maybe it's going slower than I thought it would. And
mm,
then yet the last couple weeks I'm seeing signs that nope, it's going faster. So
mm,
I go in and out of the speed of the hype
mm.
versus the
Yeah.
hype itself. I'm pretty sure the hype is it's happening, and that it's not going to stop per se. But it's the speed at which it's happening that is where I go in and out of and try to pace myself and my own
Yeah.
thoughts.
And there's this mood thing, right? It's annoying, isn't it? I feel it's annoying, right? Always going like, now I know. Now I'm not sure I know. Now I know again. Now am I right? I get that a lot, and I sense you do too.
Yeah, it's like I see something and then my brain jumps to something else and I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, this is gonna all happen like now. And then no, 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 no. It's gonna take a while for humans to catch up to this and learn this. But then you hear about an organization that's actually doing it. And so
Yeah.
then I'm like, oh, it's here, it's here, it's here. But it's like, wait, that's one organization or 1%, not, what's it
And then
gonna
something
take
else
to
happens, and you're like looking at that. Oh, did I even look for that? No, no, I don't know if I looked for that. But now it's here, it's here, it's here. But is someone knows not going to use it, and it keeps on moving like that, right, all the time. Like, whoa, it feels a little bit, I don't know,
yeah.
attention span disorder or something, right?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that true?
Totally. Yeah.
So going back to that God quote I just made, not God quote, Bible quote. I don't quote, but God made the world, and it's up to us to give things name, right? Isn't that really, by the way, at its core, what a BA is all about? Giving name to everything that's out there and saying this is valuable, this is not, putting it together, making decisions.
In some ways, yeah. I mean, It's about defining decisions, if that's putting a name to it. It's about defining value, what's valuable, and
Hmm.
and getting a community of your business colleagues together to make good decisions on it, right?
So Adam was the first business analyst.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
right. I mean, yeah, there's just the business analyst is the invisible glue of an organization, right?
Mm, mm,
They're
mm.
they're defining things. They're making things happen that it's not always noticed at face level. But then if you don't have it being done, it's like, whoa, 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 there's chaos. Because if
Yeah.
things aren't defined and measurements aren't defined, success isn't defined, the connections aren't made between the data, people, tech, process, and the flow
No.
of the data throughout, chaos happens. We've all seen it.
So should we really be playing catch up to tech like we're doing? Like we just spoke about the attention thing, just moving. Oh, now this happens. Now this happens. Now this happens. Now,
Hmm.
oh no, I think this is right. No, but now this happened, right?
Yeah.
Should we be playing this catch up, or should we always require technology to fit our needs? The things we've analyzed, the problems.
Probably a little bit of both.
Hmm.
I think a little bit of
That's
both,
the
right? It's too easy to get too far ahead of ourselves and to get too far behind. We've got to, I think, switch lenses. Kind of
hmm.
like switching lenses between a detailed and a big picture, right? We have to go in and out of both to keep track of both.
Hmm.
And we have to go in and out of the hype and the tech to keep our sanity and not fall behind or get too far ahead of ourselves.
So that's the harmless answer, Angela, isn't it?
Am I not being provocative enough?
No. Way too agnostic, Angela.
Just gonna say both.
Yeah, but it also makes sense, right? It makes complete sense, and
Yeah.
it's also the BA answer to be in the middle of it, right? Instead of being in one side. So I
Right.
think it's a brilliant answer, actually, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I'll
And that
take that.
actually also that also brings me to the final question of this podcast. I think this has been a brilliant conversation, and I think we've been around so many things, and I think we've been diving deep and going far.
Hmm.
Um, so, are you ready for the final question?
I am.
So, Angela, what is the only constant?
The only constant is really about paying attention, I think, to what we're trying to optimize. So currently, too many, like we talked about, are trying to optimize a small task or a silo when we could completely imagine the entire goal, right? These small task optimizations can help us learn, but don't stop there, right? We have to keep looking back up on, right, what are we actually trying to optimize at a bigger picture level? And I think about, for example, developers writing code. Okay, what percentage of time are they actually writing code? Sure, Gen AI can write code for them, but what percentage of time are they actually doing that? And do we optimize the whole of the developer? Or wait, that's not a big enough picture. What about the whole of the SDLC? Wait a second, we have to keep looking up. Well, what's the SDLC trying to do? Trying to make change. And for business analysts, same thing. Like we can optimize writing requirements with generative AI. But yet, then I scratch my head and say, are requirements even needed anymore? I know that's a very controversial, provocative statement. Or should we be looking at analysis overall in the human AI collaboration? So in the past, we tried to optimize a touch point or a task. With Gen AI and digital transformations, just like other big innovations in tech, we have to look at the bigger picture and completely redesign customer and user experiences, internal or external. Define the right measurements and ruthlessly experiment and collaborate to get there. Looking beyond ourselves and our own micro tasks for bigger impact. And to me, that's the only constant. Looking beyond and constantly challenging ourselves to look beyond what we're trying to optimize.
That's a really great answer, Angela. And you know, it's almost context is king, isn't it?
For sure.
I love it, and I've loved having you on the podcast, Angela. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You've listened to The Only Constant, a podcast sponsored by Basico.